Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts.
Heidi-ho there, this is Jackie.
And it's me, Diana. Hello.
Hi. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research, where every week, except for this one, we pick a topic and discuss relevant research articles. And why not this one, you might ask? Because you've been doing this for like 200 plus episodes? Well, folks, we used to do, every 12 episodes, we do what's called a grab bag, where we would all just get a giant bag of articles, we'd dig around inside, and we'd choose an article that spoke to us. You know, like a Ouija board of articles. But nobody liked those episodes, so we stopped doing them regularly. But sometimes...
We did.
We like
them.
So,
I don't think people dislike them. I don't think they're as popular.
They just didn't care.
Some people actually love that. Remember, we used to go through emails like, thanks for doing a grab. I haven't done those in a long time.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, then my story is no good. But in any case, we decided it was high time for a grab bag because sometimes you just don't get to the most recent research articles, depending on what your topic is, or they're a few years old, or they're themed. So we said, let's do another grab bag, folks. So we did. And that's what we're doing for grab bag. So in grab bag, we just do an article, discuss it, ask any questions we feel like, and that's an episode. But the topics are probably not related to each other because we don't know what the topics of everyone are until we're recording. So it's very exciting for us too.
Very exciting.
It's a little spontaneity. It's like, oh, no, not another episode where we all read the articles and thought about them and discussed them together. No,
it's like a surprise for us.
super surprise.
We get to teach each other.
All right, so let's get started with the first of our articles. I'll go first if y'all don't mind.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to dig around in the old grab bag. Let me dig around. Sound effects. And, oh, this is perfect for me. It's called Training Soccer Goalkeeping Skills. Is video modeling enough?
You don't even teach soccer.
I'm an assistant coach on a first grade soccer team, I'll have you know, Jackie.
Oh my goodness.
You know, not everyone
more
knew.
Professional than that.
So involved.
We were told you're doing goal kicks and corner kicks. And everyone said, what the heck is that? And I said, I know what that is because I'd seen my older son do it. I know, very impressive.
You were like, sports.
I know, I had a referee.
Oh,
It was very exciting.
not because you read this article?
No, this article is about goalkeeping skills.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Which you don't do in first grade. And this is by Capalbo, Miltenberger, and Cook from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis 2022. This is the summer edition, folks.
Wow.
I know.
It's hot off the press. But don't worry, there's other things that are hotter.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
So this article really speaks to me because right now we're recording this. It is the fall, which means we are doing fall activities. And usually we have a Fallapalooza. We have all sorts of fun fall-related activities. But most of those have been canceled this year due to tons and tons of soccer practice. And in fact, I have actually been using one of my son's hour and a half, 2 times a week soccer practices to do a lot of podcast work. It's 3 dedicated hours. I can just work on podcast things away from the house, outside. It's a lot of fun. So, of course, goalkeeping skills, not something that any of my kids are goalkeepers, but, soccer, that same idea. I thought, let's go for it. I also am a huge fan of the question about the article topic title scheme. So this is it's firing on all cylinders. I'm very excited. So the purpose of this article was to look at how to improve athletic performance, which, again, there's a lot of research, a lot of it by Miltenberger and many of his colleagues, looking at, well, how can you use the various techniques we have to improve skill acquisition for athletic performances? Can you do it for different ages, different experiences, different modalities, different sports? And there was a review in 2019 by Schenk and Miltenberger looking at all of the procedures and all of the sports in which there's published research using a lot of behavior analytic techniques. So there were 23 different procedures, 21 sports looked at. Those range from things like antecedent procedures, which would include video modeling in the title, goal setting would be another one, consequent procedures, again, reinforcement, feedback, use of feedback, so video feedback, public posting feedback, and then various skill trainings like simulated practice, and then other. I was surprised BST fell into other rather than skill training, but okay, it was their article. And habit reversal is just kind of examples. So that's not all 23, but that's just a wide swath of techniques that can be used. But the big findings seem to be that every athlete's favorite training type, or at least most effective training type, is somewhat idiosyncratic. So in some studies, there was a yoga study, for example, where there was a video self-eval, and 2 participants learned all the yoga poses they needed to. But there was a third that kind of did okay with the video self-eval, but without video feedback, never reached that same mastery criterion. So it does appear that it's a little bit of what's your poison in terms of your training.
A little bit country, a little bit rock and roll.
Pretty much.
A little bit of feedback, a little bit watching yourself.
Yeah. And I know our friend of the show, former guest, Dr. Mallory Quinn, had done a lot on public posting. That had been very effective for dance and dance students. So this is
tag teach.
Yeah, and tag teach. Yeah. So this is not a brand new topic for us to discuss, but I had never seen one about soccer. And as the authors will tell you, there hasn't been an article on soccer goalkeeping skills, possibly ever. So this is brand new. So when we talk about best practice for training, the thought might be, well, let's pick something that will probably work and is kind of easy, and your trainee says, sure, I'll give that a shot, and hey, maybe it'll all work out. And if it doesn't, well, here's a bunch of stuff you can add in your treatment package. So one of the easiest and popular training modalities is video modeling, where you watch a device, and I love how they define video modeling like I've never heard of a video before, quote unquote, that provides dynamic images of an expert athlete correctly engaging in the target behavior.
Dynamic
like a
images.
stereoscope?
Yeah, so if you took your time machine from 1870 and came forward and someone was like, oh, video modeling, you'd want to know that's a dynamic image that you're looking at. As opposed to like a flip book,
a static image,
some sort of kaleidoscope.
Yeah. What are those things called? I just made one where you have a picture and then you spin it around.
Oh, like a zoetrope?
Zoetrope. We just made one of those in like our monthly science thing. I'm like, we could have done a zoetrope.
Yep.
It makes a moving picture.
Yes.
It's very
incredible.
impressive.
So crazy.
Yeah, so cool.
Analogy.
All right, but that's not what this is. This is not zoetrope modeling.
Called a video.
Oh.
This is a video.
I'm going to make that though. Next is like, can you use a zoetrope to teach?
As far as we know, no research in training sports has ever used a zoetrope. Publish it just on that. Typically, video modeling, however, is paired with feedback. So you've got different training research saying, well, sometimes you can just use video modeling, but sometimes you need to add a package intervention. So which is going to work? One of the more popular additions to video modeling is video feedback. And that is where a coach records the athlete themselves doing the skill, then shows that athlete the video and gives them feedback, which is, again, we've talked about what feedback is and isn't, but in this case, it's praise and then instructions or corrective feedback for any step that had an error in it. But wouldn't it be great if you could just say, here, watch this video, because it requires a lot less individual attention, meaning you could use these techniques for more athletes at once. Also, the videos would be great if the athletes themselves said, I just want to be able to practice on my own. They don't need the feedback necessarily. And again, some folks find verbal feedback aversive too, though I didn't get a great citation here. It just seemed like some coaches they asked said, I hate feedback. It quote, can overwhelm athletes, not hold value for the athlete, and impedes independent problem solving.
That sounds silly.
Yeah. So I just quoted that from the article. It's like their buddy. I'm not sure who said that.
One coach, just random coach, just is like, hey, I'm a coach.
It's me, Coach McGurk. I teach football at the local high school. So we've got our old friend, like I said, our old friend Dr. Quinn had used some similar procedures to the ones they're going to use here, using video modeling first, then adding video feedback for some competitive dancers, and found kind of, I think, the subtext of this article were the results that we expect to find, which were video modeling is okay, and it can show some increases in athlete performance, but you're really going to have to add the video feedback if you want to see huge improvements to your skill. But again, that's not something that is definitive. There hasn't been a ton of research on using video modeling alone. And there, like I said, haven't been a lot of studies on training soccer skills using video modeling or video feedback, and never on training goalie skills. So this is very important and must be researched. So it was. So we've got 2 participants. They're 9-year-old boys in a club soccer team who've been playing for 4 years. And I loved this part that they were referred to as they've been goalkeepers for 3 years and had no formal training.
That's like every child.
Which does sound like, yeah, if you're 9 years old on a club soccer team, you've probably been told, this is your position. I assume you know how to do it really well, and you just run around and kick the ball, and there you go. That's great. So big limitation there. Perhaps the kids should have been taught how to be goalies beforehand. But hey, perfect participants for this line of research.
They're like, oh, crap, we forgot to train them.
Yes. I don't want to throw shade on our first author, Capalbo, but she served as the coach, which was great, except there was this huge description. And I think it was to show her, bona fides in terms of she was a national, champion soccer player. She'd been in all these teams and won all these awards. But and I'm sure she felt bad putting this in the article, but it's really hard to write about all the great things you did as a soccer player in your research article and not have it sound like, I'm pretty awesome at soccer as well as research and behavior analysis.
But she probably had to caveat that she has a lot of background experience.
Yeah.
And was serving as the researcher.
I know. I bet if she gave this talk, it would be a lot. Now, I mean, one of the reasons I did this, and then it would sound like, oh, that's just a good fact. But in a research article, it's like, wow, look at you. You're so amazing. So apologies to Alexandra. I was a little like, wow, so impressed by all your soccer skills. But she served as the coach and recorded the participants' goaltending skills and was the one who gave feedback in the video feedback phase. Because, spoiler alert, they had to use video feedback in this article. So there were 3 different saves that were being practiced. There was the high jump, where you jump up in the air to catch the ball. There was the forward smother, where you scoop up a fast rolling ball and then dive forward to hold it in place. And then the side dive, where you lunge to the side to catch the ball at the side of the net. And as I was taking notes on this article, I was really closely watching my son's team's goalie and seeing if he did any of these. There was almost a side dive, but they didn't describe how to give feedback, so I just stayed on the sidelines and continued taking notes rather than yelling and saying, here, look at these videos.
This is not the kid that you're the coach for.
No, we don't have goalies in first grade soccer. So if I told them what to do, they would be told to stop doing that. Mm-hmm. So it would not be effective.
And as a parent, you should not be yelling from the sidelines, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yes. Okay, no.
Right.
No. I was being good.
Very good.
I'm a super parent yeller.
So just because I already know a ton about soccer, I'm just going to point out that as a goalie, you are allowed to touch the ball with your hands.
Wow,
it sounds like you're from America. Because everyone else around the world knows what a goalie does.
Everyone else around the world calls it football.
Yes.
I also know that fact about soccer.
Very good.
Thank you. Well, just when you're describing these moves, right? Mm-hmm. Like the smother, I never knew it was called that.
I described the smother. So I put it in my notes.
Yeah.
If I just told you the smother, you'd be like, you run up to the ball and you smack it real hard, like trying to put out a fire.
I just think about the smolder from.
Well, you could use the smolder.
Tangled. Here comes the smolder.
You could use the smolder, but you'd probably just get the ball kicked past you because you're not actively trying to stop it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
The goalie's job is to stop the ball.
So now we're all on the same page.
Now we're all on the same page. So instead of the trainer kicking the ball, the trainer would throw the ball from about 6 to 9 meters away. So you could just do a lot of practice of these goalie skills.
Makes sense.
And they do sort of these assessments, both in the baseline and intervention condition, where they would sort of just, here you go, we're going to do all the kicks, or we're going to do all the saves, go. And then they do a bunch of them. And that was sort of their practice. And that's where you get your pluses or minuses and get your percentage correct steps, which is the dependent variable here. There was a TA, so our coach was able to sort of note what was and wasn't done correctly in the steps. And then after everything was done, they asked the kids a social validity questionnaire to see if they enjoyed this process. So it was a multiple baseline design across the different goalkeeping behaviors for each participants. They'd run these 30-minute coaching sessions twice a week, and so they always had enough time to do 9 total sort of sessions for all of the components of the soccer saves. And the goal was really to look at starting with video modeling, and then depending on how well that went, did feedback need to be added? If they didn't see an increasing trend or sort of an improvement, but then a stabilization of that trend, they'd move from video modeling to the video modeling plus feedback. So in baseline, they just said, do your best, and threw the ball at the kid a bunch of times, saw what they did. In video modeling, the participants got to watch a video of a college varsity goalkeeper doing each save, and then got to practice imitating the save. They got no feedback, though. It was just, here, watch this. Pretty great. Now you do it. And they'd have kind of 3 consecutive opportunities to view and then practice, and then they'd get their assessment where, all right, no model, you just got to do the saves. Show me what you got. If they did not progress or show an increasing trend in their improvement in their soccer goal saving skills, they'd add the video feedback package. So again, same thing with the video model. They'd have the participant do the save. They'd let the participant see the video of their save and compare it side by side with the expert video. Then they give verbal feedback. Here's what you did right. Here are the instructions for where you made errors. And then they'd repeat this, 2 more times. And then they'd go back. All right, now you're going to just try it. Do your best. Try it. That was the assessment afterwards. And then 2 weeks later, they did a follow-up, which is similar to baseline. So, how did our athletes do? So David started off struggling with, 20% accuracy of the steps in his high jump and 25% on his smother. Also, very low in his side dive. So in baseline, was not able to do any of these saves above, about 20, 30%. Correct. With video modeling, there was an improvement in skill. So for high jump and side dive, it went up to like 40-ish%. Surprisingly, well, I guess not surprisingly because you didn't read the article, but forward smother actually did go up to 75% accuracy across those assessments. So video modeling was very effective for the forward smother, though video feedback was added for all 4 conditions because none of them reached mastery with video modeling alone, and you saw a huge jump so they went up to like 90+% when the video feedback was added, and in the case of like the forward smother even went up to like 100% in follow-up. So learned all of the skills. So while video modeling did show immediate improvement for all of the soccer goalkeeping skills, they all kind of leveled off before they reached the mastery criterion. But even the smother, like with that huge jump up from 20% accurate steps to 75 or 25% accurate steps in baseline to 75% in video modeling, then kind of started dropping off over time. So it didn't seem to be able to sustain at that high a kind of percentage correct steps.
But did they stop the ball? Because ultimately, as long as you stop the ball, it's a success.
So they did not write whether they stopped the ball or not. They just noted whether they followed the steps of the save.
Okay.
But, I mean, especially in a game like soccer and being a goalkeeper, if you're jumping and just sort of like hucking yourself at the ball, you could seriously injure yourself, too, if you're doing the same moves over and over. So I would think that would be something that you'd want to take into account. If you're not doing it right, when you're 9, you can just throw yourself all over the place and then get back up. But, when you're 16, right. 17, 18, you're going to blow out your knee. You're going to, get kicked in the face. There's a lot of ways that you need to do things properly to make sure that you both are saving the ball and avoiding injury to yourself.
Sure.
Jonah had a pretty similar pattern in terms of pretty low percentages correct skills for any of the saves in baseline, an increase when video modeling was added. Video modeling was only added for Jonah for the smother save and for the high jump. There was no video modeling for side dive, which we'll talk about in the discussion. And similarly, yes, there was an improvement with video modeling alone, but never showed a consistent increase. The percentages stalled or they decreased over time, but video feedback, boom, you're up 90% or above. All of the participants were, relatively enjoyed the training. One was kind of neutral about, participating. Both agreed that video modeling made their technique better. Both strongly agreed that video feedback helped them get better. One of them wanted to keep practicing using these techniques. One of them was kind of neutral. That seems weird to me. Like, hey, didn't you like getting better at that skill? I guess it was fine. Like, what's that response?
I mean, it's probably like, hey, I want to go home and play video games now. So, like, yeah, it was fine.
But you are the video game in video modeling. So, again, great. Video modeling was pretty effective, but really the video modeling and video feedback did seem to be the superior technique. And why did Jonah not do video modeling for that one side dive? Well, because it was important to demonstrate that it wasn't a matter of you need to do video modeling and then add video feedback. It does seem that if you just wanted to do video modeling plus video feedback, you would still see that sharp increase that maintained at follow-up. So so video modeling can have benefit alone, and it's a lot shorter. It took half the time of adding the video feedback. But if the goal is to reach a high percentage of sort of correct steps in a technique, it does appear you're probably going to need to add that video feedback. Now, there's still a lot of research you could do in this area because, there were modest effects of video modeling, and it's possible that they could have been improved. The authors gave a lot of suggestions like, well, what if you did video prompting instead? So you paused at each step in the video to make it clearer what you were supposed to do. Or there were loops, continuous video modeling. What if the kids were allowed to manipulate the playback and pause and rewind and watch certain parts over and over again? What if they did slow-mo, changed the playback speed and made it slower so it was easier to see the distinct actions in the video? Could they zoom in on the relevant features of the video? Could they add narration or text and arrows like here's where the knee should be or here's where your hands should be? And again, it may be that sometimes the more complex skills don't lend themselves to video modeling alone, but a simple skill might. It also may matter how much experience these athletes had. If they had received a lot of training in being a goalie and were learning more advanced skills with video modeling, would video modeling alone have been more effective? And there was also this cool reference to a software package called Dartfish that actually allows you to do a video self-eval, sort of like records yourself and then gives you feedback through it. I wasn't able to get the website to work, and it seemed like you had to pay for it. So I didn't have a good internet where I was. That's the other problem if you're doing a lot of your notes at the soccer field is your internet's not so great. So I wasn't able to look too closely into it, but it did seem like a very fancy company where you could get the software and it would like give you a lot of feedback. So again, that might be a way to sort of get away from needing the same type of video feedback. Is, outsource it, right, to somebody else. So it did seem
Pretty cheap, only $5 a month.
Wow, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That part didn't load for me. That's nice. So it does seem that video modeling plus video feedback is superior to video modeling alone, but there are still a lot of questions and a lot of ways that you could really double check to see, is it possible to do something different with video modeling to make it as effective as the package? And so that is a question for the future.
As you were talking, I realized that I used video modeling when I was a swimmer.
Oh.
They would take underwater video footage of my stroke in college, and then we would all watch it in a big group and dissect it. Yeah.
That's very cool.
I know, and I even went to a D3 school.
Nice.
Yeah, it turns out I have my stroke is too short.
How, you're not reaching far enough?
Yeah. So just so you know.
Well, I don't know how much research there is on video modeling and swimming, but if there isn't one or there's a stroke missing,
let's do it.
Get it published, folks. We need to be exhaustive on this.
Nice.
And that was my grab bag. Whew. I'm so tired from all that soccer talk. I'm going to side dive over to the pause button and we can take a little break. We'll be right back with even more grab bag.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD-level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there!
And we are back, diving into the grab bag once again. But before we get into Dinah and Jackie's picks for the grab bag, I want to remind our listeners that ABA Inside Track is ACE and QABA approved. By listening to the show, you're able to earn 1 learning credit. All you need to do is finish listening, then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com/getceus, or click on the link that is in your podcast player for this episode. That will take you directly to the page where you can enter in some key information, including 2 secret code words. The first secret code word, I will give it to you right now. It is RISK. R-I-S-K. RISK. Much like in soccer, when you must take a risk every time you dive for the ball, or for those of you board gamers out there, it's a big old game where you have to take Kamchatka if you want to win the whole thing, as Seinfeld would tell us.
Can I tell you that I have actually played Risk?
You did? Did you like it?
No.
It's a very long and boring game.
So long. Mm-hmm. But anyway, just wanted you to know because I don't usually play games, but
you played Risk.
I bought it for my partner one Christmas, and then he's like, now you have to play it. And I'm like, oh no. I thought you were going to play this with your friends. I'm not your friend.
No.
Why didn't I see this coming?
You gotta be careful when you're playing with your partner, Jackie, because he's an unscrupulous
He's
warrior
ruthless.
when it comes to those types of games.
He is. I lost quickly, so the game didn't actually last that long.
Okay, so if you're playing as someone who can beat you at Risk, that's the way to play it. Just let them roll over your armies. Risk. All right, well, let's get back to our grab bag. Diana, It's not your turn to dive in and pick an article for the show.
All right, great. Will you actually reach in and get one out for me?
Oh, sure. Why not? Let's see. Oh, I'm trapped in here. Help.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Just leave it.
Oh, I made it.
Oh, he made it.
Okay.
Okay.
Woo.
All right. Oh, look at this. This article, is pretty exciting. It's by Strickland and Cohn. It was published in 2022, and it's titled Behavioral Skills Training to Teach College Students to Free Pour Standard Servings of Alcohol, and it was published in Behavioral Interventions.
Didn't you do this article already?
No, I did a different one.
It sounds like you did this one,
But
though.
this one is an updated version, so I thought that I would review it as well. I think
Okay.
this is actually an interesting and potentially useful line of research.
How to get kids to drink the right amounts?
Yeah.
Very important.
I like
That's
that.
going to come up.
Yep.
Okay. So our author let us know that this is an important topic to cover because alcohol use is the third leading cause of preventable death in the United States. Over half of college students report regular drinking, even though the age to drink in the U.S. is 21. And over a third report binge drinking patterns, which is drinking between 4 to 5 drinks in a 2-hour period.
Did you ever binge drink in high school?
No?
Nope.
Oh, I guess I'm the only one. I have binge drank in high school.
Oh. No, I was a good boy.
So
I
it is
didn't
an
drink till I was
issue.
18. I think I had a Zima. Remember those?
Yeah. Yuck. I think I binge drank a Zima as well.
That one wouldn't be as much
And a
fun
Boone.
coming back.
No, it's not.
Man.
Remember Boone's? It's like a wine cooler.
Oh, we had Bartles and James.
Oh, yeah.
too. Okay, anyway.
Those are easy to binge drink. We went to a cider festival this past weekend. And, ooh, man, you could probably drink most of those in about 5 seconds because they taste just like Kool-Aid. You'd
It's a
easily find
danger.
yourself binge drinking.
It is a danger, yeah. But that's the point, is that it's not good to binge drink. That's actually what the point I was trying to make here.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's not good to binge drink. No.
Not good. So they thought that a good way to approach this issue that we see is by working with what they called Greek letter organizations, or GLOs, which include...
I love that band.
Have you seen that show, Glow? Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling?
I think that one had a
I
W.
haven't.
But this is Greek letter organization. So fraternities and sororities, they said they are big contributors to binge drinking on campuses, as we all know. And some of the national organizations are also looking to have chapters conduct training related to, binge drinking and appropriate alcohol use in their chapter houses. So it's beneficial for them as well to kind of get involved in this training area. Our authors say the best approach would be an abstinence approach, but given that is potentially unlikely, they would recommend approaching this from a harm reduction standpoint. So teaching people what is dangerous levels of alcohol use and how to determine that will hopefully be effective at, saving lives. So there have been a few studies that looked at this type of drink pouring, helping people know what actually is a serving of alcohol. And I think it must have been me, reviewed one of these. They used BST in it. It was Henkla et al. 2018. Probably was me. And that was, if you want to go back and listen, that was in our episode 72, Grab Bag Beyond Thunderdome is the name of that grab bag episode. If you're ever curious what all the grab bags are named, you should go check out what Rob has named them on our webpage because they're all pretty funny.
And please read the descriptions of each episode as well. I spent a lot of time on those.
Yeah, you do. So that one, if you want to hear like a previous version, you can hear that, but they've updated it because all of the previous research focused specifically on beer, but they said that it's other more potent drinks may be even more likely to be overpoured because they're smaller and it's, sort of easy to overpour those. And there hasn't been very much research at all looking at maintenance or generalization of these skills over time. So they said, behavior skills training, we know it, we love it, let's do it. The participants were recruited from 3 different GLOs, 1 fraternity and 2 sororities. And the GLOs let the researchers come in and recruit at one of their weekly chapter house meetings that they hold. This was, like I said, beneficial for the GLOs as well, because then they could report to the national organizations that they were providing training. So once they had people recruited, they offered these private training sessions at the fraternity or sorority house for the interested participants. And they did it 1 hour like the hour before or the hour after the weekly chapter meeting. So it was convenient for the participants too. And if they had a lot of people interested, which at some of the houses they did, then they randomized taking them back and doing baseline. And the first 4 of the interested people that did not accurately pour the liquids during baseline were then included in the study. And they determined if it was an accurate or inaccurate pour, by inaccurate being 10% over or under the standard serving size pour. So through this process, they ended up with 10 initial participants. I will note that they were aged 18 to 22. So it was a whole range of like freshmen up through seniors in college. And there were people in that sample for sure who were under the age of 21. And they, took data on their past experiences with drinking and also with alcohol training like this as well. And one thing that was a little bit interesting is they said one of our exclusion criteria was that they had experienced training before. But we made a mistake and included one person in baseline who had this type of training in the past, but they still were inaccurate in their pouring. So we included them in the study, which makes it kind of, they were probably like, oh, we should not have included that as an exclusion criteria because clearly that training previously didn't make a difference for that person. So that's kind of good to note. The dependent variable was free pour volumes. They were then converted into percentage deviations from the standard serving. So for beer, this was a 12-ounce serving, and so accurate was plus or minus 10% of that, which equated to 10.8 to 13.2 ounces. So you could be pretty big range, right? Mm-hmm. But then for liquor, it's serving
quicker.
Yes, candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. Liquor was 1.5 ounces, so then a plus or minus 10% of that was just not very much deviation at all, right? Yeah. And so they had to, you can read the paper, and they had to do all these things. And
it's like this tiny.
I know, it's so tiny. So they ended up converting it over to a metric volume because it was too hard to measure on the digital scale. So that meant that the range was 40 to 50 milliliters was all that you could be off for that one. So it was our dependent variable. Our design was a non-concurrent multiple baseline across participants. And it all occurred within one semester, which is non-concurrent because they visited the different houses on different days of the week. And they had both small group and individual behavioral skills training. They also include some data in the study for participants who came to baseline, but then didn't actually do the BST. So you have it's kind of like a control group data present there, but they mostly, to me, just made extra noise when trying to look at the data. So they got their participants in baseline. It was either one week of baseline all the way up through 4 weeks of baseline, which was the multiple baseline design. And for each baseline, they asked them to give them a pour of beer and liquor 3 times for each one.
I'm into it.
Right. It wasn't real.
I know.
And
I can't drink anyway. What am I saying? But
and then the researchers would shotgun whatever they were poured.
No, right? I know they don't describe until later about the materials. The beer was watered down tea, basically.
Yes,
to make it the color of some Bud Light, I believe.
Oh.
And then the liquor was just water, and they said it to look like vodka.
I like the watered down tea. I'm into it.
Ugh.
Gross. I think I have that right now.
Yeah, you sure do.
Yep.
And they kept them in baseline until they saw stability, which was 3 sessions in a row that were either all over, all under, or all at the correct amount. And all pours, whether they were beer or liquor, were done into an 18-ounce round-bottom red Solo cup. Mm-hmm. We all have seen them.
If only fraternities would drink from pre-approved aluminum cans, this problem would stop.
This is only part of the problem, though.
Or you get those things they have at the fancy bars where when you're pouring the liquor, it only lets you pour out just enough, and then it stops and won't let you pour anymore.
Yeah. Those are handy.
Wait, why don't they just invest in those? That seems like a great solution.
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
And I'm going to get some of that. All right, so after baseline, everyone who was included in the study, needed to be there. I will note for you, though, since I'm talking about it right now, is that some of the people who were included in the study were off in their percentages, but it's because they were under.
Oh.
Yes, right. You think that they would all be over,
And that would be better.
but they were underestimating the amount that was a serving. But they were still in the study. So,
But it wasn't like a party environment.
no, it was not.
You know, if someone says like pour
Exactly.
liquor, I'd probably pour less than more.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a
'Cause I'm like, I don't know what they want me to
artificial
do with this.
environment, right?
Sure, yeah.
Exactly. So, just to note that. But either way, they weren't accurate. So, kind of like with yours, Rob, if they weren't doing it right, then there could be many things that could go wrong. So they kind of arranged it so that for the most part, the beer BST was done in small groups and the liquor BST was done individually. I think that was just to get some additional data. So the small groups were 2 participants at 2 of the houses, and then the third house only ended up having one participant there. So they had a small group of 1, I guess. And what the BST looked like was the experimenter to the group described the target's skill, told them what the standard serving amount was. So like today we're going to pour beer. Beer is a 12-ounce serving. And then they modeled that into a red Solo cup. And then the participants did it themselves. They all did it at the same time. The researchers then poured what they had done into another cup that was on the digital scale and said, okay, beer is 12-ounce serving. Your serving is 13.5 ounces, which is an overpour, for example.
And then they said chug, 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 chug.
I don't know what they did with it. They probably just poured it back in the pitcher. And then during the beer session, they also had a poster in the background with like a giant Solo cup and a mark on it to show where it fills up to. That was just a bonus feature. It's part of the instructions, I guess.
Thank you, Solo Corporation, for this giant poster you've sent us.
And then the liquor was done in an individual BST format. And that happened 1 week after the beer. So they always did beer first, then liquor. And for this one, now this is kind of interesting too. The experimenter had a pre-measured amount of water that they demonstrated with because it was so hard to get right.
Oh, yeah.
That they were like, we don't want the experimenter to mess up. So they gave them the exact amount. But then for the participants, they had a full water bottle that they then needed to pour 1.5
Smart.
ounces from into the Solo cup.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, it was the same, but there was no poster for whatever reason. And then they did the PTPs, which were the post-training pours.
Nice.
And this was identical to baseline. Now, for many of the participants, that was the end of it because they learned through this method. For 2 participants, they needed something called model stimulus training. With this one, the participant was given the experimenter's model cup to use for guidance. So like the experimenter did it, and then they gave them the cup so they could basically compare to see if they had the same amount in them. That worked great for one participant, but for one of them, they needed to go further. And then they did something called marked stimulus training. And here they received a red Solo cup with the line marked on it that
People
they
love
needed to
that.
pour to.
Yeah.
Right. And this was they only needed that for liquor and only for one participant. And then the study was over.
There you go.
When they
Right?
got to
They're
that
like,
part,
thank goodness.
They were like, we're out of time. So that was challenging for that participant. But for everyone else, they did follow-up 1 and 2 weeks after. They tested for maintenance, and they also tested for generalization with a square-bottomed red
What?
Solo cup.
That's a product?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
You can get round bottom or square bottom.
Wow.
Pretty subtle difference,
But
but
serious.
you could encounter one or the other.
That's
They
true.
didn't test different colors of Solo cup. So that research remains to be done.
This is a replication extension because I used a different color cup.
Blue. They did some social validity work in which they asked participants how they liked this. For the most part, they did like it. But there is one question that I really want to note here, which is they asked the participants, has participation in BST aided in your ability to accurately count drinks? And 5 of the 6 said, yes, it has. Then they said, has participation in BST aided in your ability to adhere to predetermined drink limits? And here, 6 out of 6 said no.
Yeah.
Makes sense, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is only a small part of the whole issue, right? Because everyone's like, oh, well, if if you know how much you're pouring, then you'll know how many drinks you had.
No.
Right?
No.
So
That's not how it happens.
they said, yeah, it will help me count my drinks, but it's not going to stop me
Right, I'm going to keep
Yeah.
going.
from how many I'm drinking.
And they said, "Go to bed, old man," as
Yeah,
the researchers walked away.
So that's a really important takeaway.
They were probably bummed about that too.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
did all this work and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it is in a very artificial type of environment, right? That this was occurring in. And that may have been why they saw those underpours that they did in baseline, some reactivity to being in a room alone with an experimenter and asked to pour a beer when you're 19 years old.
I've never touched beer.
Right. And there were some varied responding, right? So some participants only needed 1 session of BST, some needed 3, 2 needed additional modifications. And for one of them, they really weren't even sure if those were effective. They did find some evidence that group BST was effective, though, in this setting. So that's good, I think, moving forward. And then finally, for limitations, they said, I'm sure they kind of were kicking themselves. They're like, for the liquor, that plus minus 10% was just so tiny that it was probably unrealistic to try to have that small of a window as their mastery criterion. They also noted that attrition from the study was high. Many people started the baseline and then didn't carry it out. And I think importantly as well, these were the people who volunteered to be in the study. So this likely could be a different population than all of the GLO members that they wanted to
The
contact.
frat nerds did the study.
Right, yeah, exactly.
The cool kids were already drunk in the fraternity house.
Yeah. They know.
You mean in the GLO house?
The GLO house.
They noted that the novel cup was not used in baseline, right? Reviewer 2 probably helped them notice that one.
We're doing reviewer 2.
And then they said that they didn't take into consideration what would it look like with bigger cups than just the solo cup, because bigger cups in the past have been shown to produce bigger pours. And then they brought up something which I had long ago, early in the article, identified as a concern for me, which was watered down tea does not make any foam. Right? And that can really actually affect
You're poor.
your pour. So they brought that up as well, that there's no foam, and we don't know what foam would do to your accuracy. And then the last thing they want us to note was, what if they did pyramidal training with the GLO leaders as the trainers?
No.
The GLO leaders
Why
would
not?
be kicked out because they're a bunch of nerds and they're not in charge of the fraternity anymore.
Well, I think they've already said that it doesn't matter how much they pour, how much they know they pour. I think that's what really we got to focus on now.
Right, there's a different issue at play.
Yeah,
Right, we can teach people to accurately measure.
Right, but that's
But
not
it's-
really what we're looking for.
Although to be devil's advocate, it's not like they then actually followed up with like an alcohol consumption log.
No.
So they may
Sure.
say this has no effect on me, but maybe it did.
Sure.
We have no way of knowing
True.
if it actually was effective in reaching the sort of the social goal
Yeah.
that was.
Okay.
And the
being
bigger
sought.
issue is the culture of the GLO.
Right.
So maybe if the leaders were to come
Yeah,
down and
maybe.
say this is actually really important,
Right.
then maybe
No,
that
Come on, guys! It's really important that we curtail our drinking here at college. That's
It
gonna,
is, though.
It is. But is that going to? I don't know if that speech is going to go over too well with your.
You need to see change, right?
Yeah.
So.
Maybe if the popular kids all start doing it.
Anyway,
I'm popular.
I just did a study on proper pouring.
pull something out for me.
All right, here we go.
Last one.
And got it.
Oh my gosh, mine is so early. It's the hottest of the hot.
That's probably why I was drawn to it, because of the warmth it was
Yeah,
giving
it's
off.
right on the top. It's like it's just been printed. It's not even printed in real life.
Well, you
It's
could-
only
you could-
early view.
You can print it from an early view,
I
though.
know.
That's how printers work.
Shh, don't tell everyone. Okay, so I am going to review Norman and Donahue 2022. This is behavior analytic jargon does not seem to influence treatment acceptability ratings.
Wait, what?
Yeah, this is in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis early view. There isn't a volume or page number yet.
My favorite ones to cite on the
It's
website.
like the 99999. So, when I looked at this, I was like, oh, wow. I've been saying my whole life that people don't like us because of our jargon.
Well, we read research and talked about research that
Right.
says people hate our
And
jargon.
I'll tell you why. Let me tell you what they say.
Tell me, please.
So, we all know that we have a marketing problem, right? Behavior analysis, like not everyone loves us so
This is
much.
one facet of our marketing problem, yes.
Yes. And it could be potentially due to the words that we use, and we may be considered as off-putting. to the outside communities, right?
Not us, but like other behavior analysts. We're
definitely.
super personable and likable.
That is true for you and me. Just kidding. Diana, on the other hand, just kidding. She's not here to say anything.
She had to step out.
Yeah. But due to our separate language, we really only play a minor role in psychology. I just totally threw shade at you, Diana, because I said that we're personable and we don't have a marketing problem, but you might. But I was totally kidding because you weren't here. But she's back now. So I said that we play a minor role in psychology, and it might be due to our language. It might be due to our snobbiness. We're not sure. But, people have long written that we should forego our language to use vernacular language or, common language when we're speaking to communities. So the authors wanted to point out that adopting vernacular language in science is not without risk. So we have to make sure that if we say, all these people are saying that they don't like us because of our language, and we get rid of our language, the language we use is shaped by the laboratory experiences. And by using non-laboratory language to discuss what we found in the laboratory, we might veer away from the more accurate aspects of what we're talking about, right?
I don't know about you, Jackie, but my mom told me to be myself. And if anyone doesn't like me, then I don't want to be their friend anyway. So
My mom did say that. But yeah. And they make the point that all natural sciences have their own language, right, and terminology. And it's
I'll say that to the next client who's like, I don't like the vocabulary you're using. I'm like, well, that's who I am. If you don't like me, then we're not going to be friends.
That's probably why people don't like behavior analysis. So I rescind my point, Diana. It's you and me. So one advantage is our language may help us be more specific about discrimination and generalization within our field, even if the outside community doesn't appreciate it. And so this idea really stemmed from those papers that we read by Critchfield and colleagues and others about how people don't like our terminology. But what's important to note about that survey and that discussion is that it was outside the context of treatment.
It was a bunch of
just a bunch of
randos putting words into,
right?
or putting rating into a big database. That's what it was.
And so the authors say, what if context matters? So what if we place our terminology into the context? What will that do to the language? Will they still hate it? Is it not favorable? So some research suggests that our language has a positive effect or a neutral effect within the context of treatment, so treatment implementation. But one thing, behavior modification, when that word is used, it did not have positive ratings in some research. What describing the intervention did. So teachers liked behavioral language when they were discussing a problem of challenging behavior in the intervention with a school psychologist based on a video vignette. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Right? They preferred that behavioral language over the vernacular. And so other research looked at what parents prefer. And one study suggested that parents did not prefer technological language over non-technological technical language, but they did remember more of the procedure when it was explained to them in non-technical terms. So what matters, right? Do they need to? It's not what they prefer, but what can they do, right?
That does kind of fit with sort of the common sense view of, well, let's say you go to a medical doctor, I'm having a procedure, and they're like, I'm going to cut you open and move your parts around. I'm going to be very upset about that. Whereas even if they use very fancy terms, I still would be, I appreciate that you use incredibly precise terms that I don't understand. But usually when you go to a doctor, it's a procedure that they're going to do. You're just going to sit there and it'll be over at some point, right?
So what they're
the doctor, drawing on my sheets, drawing a diagram.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
There's sort of a back and forth. You want them to explain it to you in a way you understand, but if it sounds too non-vernac, if it sounds too common sense terminology, you sort of wonder, does this doctor think I am stupid? Is this doctor incompetent and they can't actually describe what they're doing?
Right.
So maybe there's a sweet spot, and that does feel a little bit more like, I think, personal experience, which would be different than the Critchfield research, which was everyone loves reinforcement. Use any other term, but
they
turn
don't
on
know
you.
It, right? So they're just looking out of context. So here, they wanted to replicate a previous study that evaluated the effects of behavioral jargon, the acceptability ratings by just the general population, but they provided multiple brief vignettes described with both technical and non-technical language. So they used a crowdsourcing site. They gave you the website and everything that they used, and they had 150 people that they crowdsourced, and they got back 141 of the respondents, so that's a 94% rate.
good.
Yep. All of them were 18 and older, lived in the United States. And they also received a little bit of credit through this crowdsourcing site. And in this table, in this article, there's a cool table showing the demographics of the article compared to the 2019 census
Oh,
to
neat.
see if they're generally capturing
this is-
what you see in the study versus what you see in real life.
Cool.
So that was really neat to see.
Yeah, the credit part, that was similar to the other studies. They did one of those database sites
Yeah.
where you get
Right. So they used Qualtrics. I love Qualtrics. And they had two versions, like two groups, right? But they were the same, but they just varied how they saw the vignettes, right? So there was two versions. There was 8 total vignettes. They described a hypothetical case of challenging behavior and its subsequent hypothetical proposed treatment. So they talked about the client, they talked about the behavior that's happening, they talked about the treatment, and then they spanned different settings, behaviors, intervention, such as like schools, industry, right, all across the lifespan. And these were taken specifically from Java articles. Which I think is cool.
Nice.
That was unlike previous studies. So they're like, we're going to give you the jargonest of jargon,
Right.
and we're going to take things directly from Java articles, because if it's in this flagship journal, it must have happened and people respect it. So they used that. I like how they put that out. So that's where the jargon came from the Java articles. And then for the non-jargon, they just went through, and every jargony term, they tried to replace it with non-technical language whenever possible. So then when they made these 8 different vignettes, they were reviewed by BCBAs, and there's a table in here that shows what the vignettes were about. So if it was a child, where it was happening, where the challenging behavior is, what the jargon term was, what the potential intervention was. They showed it all to you, which is neat. So you're going to be doing this survey. You answer some demographic information. Then you're showing your 8 vignettes, 4 jargon and 4 non-jargon. And then, just so you know, it's clear, they also randomized the order of the vignettes that they were shown in. And then the participants completed a modified version of the treatment evaluation inventory short form so that they could look at the acceptability across these vignettes. But they did modify it so that it wasn't just based on children, but for all individuals. So there was 9 items, and there was a 5-point scale. 1 was strongly disagree, 5 was strongly agree. Cool?
cool.
That's all they did.
So
Survey.
each group got the vignette with it in technical language and everyday language?
Yep.
Or it was counterbalanced across the group? So each group only encountered the vignette
4.
one time?
Yes, but 4 different ones. 4 different jargony ones and 4 different non-jargony ones, but not together.
Okay, but they got all 8 vignettes.
They all got 8
in
vignettes.
one form
Yep.
or the
Okay,
other.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So then what they found is that their sample size was representative of the larger population. After they said something about they had some instructions that you had to follow, 77 people didn't follow them, which is funny. So then they were left with 60-something people. And they
Jeez.
ranged in age from 25 to 69 with a mean of 30. 75% were identified as female. 23% were identified as a male. 1 didn't understand the question. They probably needed to add something else, right? Non-binary
Yeah.
and of the like. 24 indicated that they had a disability, and that could include mental health, a mobile disability, learning disability, or a sensory impairment disability. 73% were white, 8% was black, 3% was Native American, 6% was Asian, 10% was Hispanic. Most were working full-time, some were working part-time, some were retired, and 1 was a student. So they're really giving you it all, right? And they had varying levels of education, high school, not even high school, some college, associate's degree. 50% had completed college, though, so most had completed college, and fewer had master's and doctorate degrees. Most of them completed a psychology course. Some had completed a psychology course in learning.
Oh.
So they put that in there. They lived all over.
How did that compare to the census? I don't remember
know,
that
right?
question coming from the government. Like, how many psychology courses have you
I
taken?
like that. 23% lived in the Midwest, 17% in the Northeast, 33% in the South, 27% lived in the West. So pretty representation, right?
So these are just people like, oh, I'm going to take internet quizzes
Yeah.
and I get a little bit of money from
Yeah.
them? Okay.
Yep, that's exactly
They got
it.
the link on BuzzFeed. After their Harry Potter house, they went to this study.
They're like, oh, I can't do this informed consent. That's where the 77 got lost, right? It's the reading. I don't really know, but okay. So on this evaluation, 45 was the highest score. 9 was the lowest score, and 27 was a neutral rating. So it's neither positive or negative.
Okay.
So they looked at the difference in acceptability between jargon and non-jargon, and they found no difference, statistically speaking. And when you look at the graph, it's figure 2, it shifts actually a little bit past the 27 mark to like positive. And there's nothing lower than 27, which is the neutral, right?
Nice.
So that's interesting. They didn't find any difference in the demographics rating either, while you're a parent or not a parent, right? So there wasn't anything that was different there. That was figure 3. But when they teased apart each of the vignettes and they looked at whether there was social significance on the specific interventions, they found there was social significance and positive effect with functional communication and motivating operations.
Okay.
They were
Motivating operations.
Interesting, yeah.
Of all the terms.
Yeah, I know. So they didn't have any reason for why those two, they saw more positive results than the others. And they were like, I have no idea. Maybe those were, we're talking about really severe challenging behavior. And what they found in previous studies is that when you're talking about very severe challenging behavior, you see more positive ratings. So they said it's important to know is what people say is different from what they do. So that's something to think, like even though they didn't find a difference between jargon and non-jargon, it doesn't mean that people wouldn't choose a non-jargon or a jargony treatment. She said even if people say they prefer one thing over the other, they may not choose it. And they use punishment as an example, right? In the study by Critchfield, they discussed how people did not like the term punishment. But in the study conducted by Hanley, participants chose punishment over the other treatment, right? So that's something to put it on. And the one limitation, and I think future research should do this, which I'm like, oh, maybe I can do this, is they didn't have participants choose between jargon and non-jargon treatments, right? They just saw them.
Which one sounds better?
Which one sounds better, but they didn't put the two back to back. Like, here's motivating operations with jargon, here's motivating operation with non-jargon, and they didn't have them choose them. But really, that's not what would happen in real life either. Usually you're referred by someone to a specific treatment. So they said that it would be important if you further this research to make it more lifelike. Like, how would you go about choosing what you're going to do and, go for? But they did say reading, it might matter when dealing with other professionals in your field and who you interact with. So if you don't have technical language and you're dealing with other professionals, you might be harder to interact with them. So that might be a time that you would want to use your technical language. And then, this one was a kicker. It's like their final point. They were like, maybe we should be considering what's being described and not how. Not how we're describing the intervention, but what we are actually describing. So are our interventions too much for people? Or are they simple? Like considering looking at, are they time effective? Are they really complicated? Can teachers do them in their classroom? Can parents do them at their home? Maybe we should be looking at that instead of how we're talking about them. And that might be the reason why behavior analysts get a bad rap. It might not be how we talk about something, but it could be that our treatments are unacceptable because they're too hard. Right?
Yes.
That was cool. I like that. So they said what we should be doing is looking at other variables that could affect interventions, such as time, effort, parent engagement, training, and that sort of thing. And then they said, I like this, it's possible that there wasn't enough jargon in our jargony vignettes.
I find that hard to
Me
believe.
too. Yeah. So that was probably another reviewer too.
Yeah.
But they were like, we don't think so, because it was very jargony. And if Java's using that jargon, then it should be more jargony than Java. And so it said, but it doesn't really matter what people say, but it's how we react to it. I was like, thanks, Dad, Mom, right? Like, thanks, caregiver here, talking about how we react to people in their social acceptability. If they don't like it, we need to be like, we can't be like, I'm going home, you're not my friend, right? We have to be like, oh, why? Let's move to a solution.
This article said you'd like it fine.
Yeah, right? So I loved that. So read this. It's early view. It's so good.
Now I'm imagining This doesn't quite seem like a study one would exactly want to do. You know, I'm trying to think like a Freakonomics episode where they're like, and then this randomly happened. There was an earthquake or something, and we could get the data in a way that you couldn't do it in a lab. Right. But you sort of want to do all the assessment. You know, you have your family, you have your intake, you do your assessment, and then you write up, this is the function-based treatment that we're going to propose. And then let's rewrite it without any of the jargon included, and then be like, we have 2 possible options for treatment, and the same option, but like, here's one, and here's the other.
Right.
And you just do this over and over again and see like which ones did the families seem to like what words it's the same technology, same conceptually systematic planning, right. But which words just seemed to get people saying, parents and families saying, yes, that sounds like I can do that. That sounds like the one I want run in my house.
Yeah, or even take your most complicated treatment and cut stuff out and see which one's more acceptable, right? With still being effective. But anyway, I thought that was really fascinating.
That is neat. What a great idea. What a great idea for a study to sort of just go back against, I think, the narrative that had come out is like, man, everyone hates our language, and think, well, what are the reasons?
Right.
And is it as simple as, nope, we hate these words, and there's more to it.
Right.
All right.
Cool study.
That is cool. Well, those were probably, I have to admit this, sometimes in grab bag, somebody grabs an article that's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, or oh, okay. I think this was three real hits. I enjoyed them all. It was a lot of fun. We're also recording earlier than we usually record, so perhaps that's the context that goes into grab bag enjoyment when you record your discussion episodes. In any case, let's go to Dissemination Station.
We don't have dissemination on grab bag.
I just thought we'd do it for symmetry. I know we don't have a dissemination station, but I don't know if you just wanted to make the noise. Just
sure, I'll make the noise, but we're not stopping. So.
No, okay. I was just blowing right past us. There's no theme. There's just 3 articles. A lot to learn.
Well, I'll add one thing.
Okay.
Which is, people at home might wonder where we get these articles from. And it is true that we print them all out and put them inside a giant bag. But in order to print them all out, the way that we do that is that we subscribe to the table of contents for these different major articles in our field. And you can do that. You can just go right onto the journal site and say, hey, I'd like to get the table of contents emailed to me when a new journal entry comes out. And you can do that. It'll come right to your inbox, and you can just briefly scroll through and say, ooh, that looks interesting. That looks like an interesting article. And it's a great way to find out like what take the pulse of the current new research that's coming out is, and it comes right to you instead of you having to go look for it. So if people are curious about where you find new research, that's a great avenue to take.
And sometimes cool. I just like to go to the website themselves and just peruse. I'm like, I'm going to pick this random year.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Oh, I still have physical copies of Java coming every quarter, and I just open it up and I just scroll through, just flip through, almost like a zoetrope. And one article just jumps off of the page at me. It's like a Ouija board. All right, well, we learned a lot about soccer goal tips. We learned a lot about how to get drunk at your frat or not get drunk at your frat. The research is still out there. And that maybe our terminology isn't as horrible as we were led to believe. How fun. Well, thanks everybody for listening to our latest Grab Bag episode. We appreciate it. We'd also appreciate it if you subscribe to the show, maybe left us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. You can find all of our previous episodes on our website, abainsidetrack.com, where all those episodes are posted, links to all of the articles discussed, as well as a place to purchase CEs if you so desire. You can find us on social media or as ABA Inside Track, or email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback. And if you want even more ABA Inside Track content, check us out on patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, where you can get all of your episodes a week ahead of time for the initial tier subscription. If you want even more content, like voting on the books we're going to do for our big full-length book clubs, discounts at the CE store, and even some free CEs thrown into the mix, you can check out the other tiers, including our $5 and $10 tier and up, but see what works for you. And again, that's patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. And finally, you're probably all wondering, hey, where's the second code word? Well, I'll tell you. It's bowl. BOWL. It's a rounded object that you can put like cereal or ice cream in.
Beer.
I guess you could put beer in a bowl, but it would be very hard to know how much to pour.
It would be so hard to know.
What a terrible generalization probe that was. bowl. Some final thanks. Thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro and outro music, Kyle Sturray for our interstitial music, and Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his fabulous editing work. We'll be back next week with another fun-filled episode, but until then, keep responding. Bye!
Bye!